And joining us now, Senator John McCain. He's the ranking member of the Senate Armed Services Committee. Senator, listen to what the Secretary of State Hillary Clinton said this morning as to a possible military option in Libya.
The British and French governments are going to the United Nations with a draft resolution that would authorize international action. We think it's very important that there be a UN decision on whatever might be done.
Now, the White House Press Secretary Jay Carney wouldn't go that far, but do you agree with the Secretary of State that the United Nations needs to authorize any U.S. military action in Libya?
I do not, because I think it's most likely, some people say absolutely sure, that the Russians and Chinese, or either or both, would veto any such resolution in the UN Security Council. So in some ways it could be a non-starter. I think there are other options, especially NATO, but there are other coalitions of the willing that perhaps could be formed, and we have intervened in other parts, in other crises, without the United Nations Security Council approval. It would be nice to have, but I think it's very unlikely given the expressed position of the Russians and also the Chinese.
What if there's no NATO authorization, because NATO requires unanimity?
Well, first of all, I certainly would want to try that, but I would have wanted to try it some time ago. Also, I think it's important to recognize the President of the United States and the Secretary of State have said Gaddafi must go. Now, if they have said that, and that's United States policy, then it seems to me that one of the determining, not the only, but one of the determining factors in the conflict that's going on right now is whether there should be a no-fly zone or not. It's very clear that the air control of the air by the Libyan forces has an effect on the battlefield, which is very harmful to those anti-Gaddafi forces who are pleading for us to impose a new no-fly zone, which I do not believe would be nearly as complicated as some would believe. So the fact is, it's our national policy, and I think that a no-fly zone and other actions could be taken that hopefully would prevent further massacre of innocent Libyan civilians.
I want to go through some of those other actions in the no-fly zone, but let me just get you on record. You favor a no-fly zone, but that would require first knocking out their air defense capabilities, cratering their runways, taking out some of their other radar equipment. Is that right?
I think it might require some of those actions. The first thing, though, is you tell the Libyan pilots that if they fly, sooner or later, that they're going to die. And you will find that has a very remarkable effect on their desire to fly. Second of all, the 4 bases around Tripoli are the areas where their air assets are located. So you're not talking about covering all of Libya. Their maintenance of the aircraft they have is not particularly good. They're not a formidable force. We are the strongest nation in the world. We should be able to take care of their air defenses as well as their air assets without too much difficulty. For 10 years, we enforced a no-fly zone over Iraq. And yes, it takes assets, but we were successful in doing so.
Here's what Bill Daley, the White House Chief of Staff, said on Sunday. I'll play the clip for you.
Lots of people throw around phrases of no-fly zone, and they talk about it as though it's just a game on a video game or something. And some people who throw that line out have no idea what they're talking about.
It sounded like he was referring maybe to you, to Joe Lieberman, to John Kerry, because you guys have been talking about it.
Well, I'm very tempted to respond to that, but I'd rather just ignore it.
Go ahead. Go ahead and respond.
No, it's not. It's a waste of your viewers' time. I think the facts are the President of the United States has said that Gaddafi has to go. Right now, the advantage to some degree is with Gaddafi forces because of their control of the air and their tanks and superior equipment, and the mercenaries who are there. So if it is our policy that Gaddafi must go, then it seems to me some action needs to be taken. For example, jamming their communications, jamming their television capability, and be prepared to have to care for a very significant humanitarian situation which is already unfolding. So, and explore, as the Secretary of State has said, all other options.
Including arming the rebels?
I think we have to assess that situation. There is a provisional government that's being formed up in Benghazi now. The first step would be recognition of that government, and then I think we would have to assess how quickly we could get the weapons, what they need, but I don't think there's any doubt right now that they're being outgunned, Wolf.
And so just to be precise, you would recognize the opposition in Benghazi right now as the legitimate government of Libya?
Absolutely, I would, and I think that they are, within a very short period of time, they are forming a government, I believe headed by the former Justice Minister, and I think we could extend that recognition to them, absolutely. Certainly Gaddafi has proven that he is illegitimate by the actions that he's taken.
One final question, Senator. It's a question I asked Nick Kristof of the New York Times about a week or so ago as well. Would it be in the U.S. national interest to simply try to take out Gaddafi right now, have him killed, for example?
I think it probably would be in our interest, but I think we've shown in the past that that is a much more difficult proposition than it initially appears. Look at our attempts at bin Laden. I would focus my attention on trying to change the battlefield equation in whatever ways that I could, so that the people of Libya are not continuing to be massacred. And I want to emphasize my opposition to U.S. ground troops in Libya, because I think that would be very counterproductive.
Senator McCain, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on, Wolf.